Today, those who have abilities for expression and communication and become a problem at school because they ask too many questions, generally boys, are put on drugs which literally shrink their brain, so they're out of the picture as far as leadership in the future goes. However, when you suppress feelings or understandings, you will find that they still work on you throughout your life. Suppression itself will show itself in other forms. Your mode of life is determined by the particular peculiarity of the economic system you're born into. People may as they get older join groups because they know there's power in groups for change, whereas as an individual you cannot do it. You'll be punished, as I say, or ostracized by a peer group, and this science of controlling groups has been of a tremendous benefit in the past and the present of those who control. They give you the outlets. They're authorized and you don't realize you end up being part of the very system that you're trying to alter. It's an interesting phenomena with this system of sadomasochism, where those who feel powerless worship power. That's why even in the black communities where there's been more work done on them to destroy their culture, from the ancient times, right down through the slave trading days, the men and women were segregated initially. The women were given favors by the boss man, and the men that they could be mated with were demeaned and punished and made to seem powerless in the black woman's eyes, and that's why black women today still are the bosses in families. The men have never been allowed to be men. This was for control purposes by a scientific elite, well understood because slavery is so old. This technique of manipulating the male through the female by his needs, the sexual drive, companionship, the procreative imperative, as they say, of survival and survival of your own species, was understood thousands of years ago up to the present time. Adolf Hitler understood this, and he used parts of his speeches from ancient tyrants in Rome because when he quoted about the propaganda the Nazi Party must use in a time of uncertainty, and it really was a time of uncertainty. It was black and white. It was communist or Nazism. Those were the choices, again, the dialectic at work that the public were given. Both sides were funded and no doubt controlled by the same group. The followers never figure out that those they oppose are being run by the same capstone. Hitler said, "Our propaganda must be based on safety and security, a lessening of worry." In other words, the survival capabilities or necessities will be taken care of. This was preached, he said, it must be preached to the female because she will come to us. Women worship power in a man. That's why they can't stay with the men today, but in their heart of hearts they long for someone with power. That's why in all the movies and dramas you see the heroes are so completely unnatural. They're not bossed around. The men know what they want. They're commanding. They're intelligent. They're not stuck on sports and have square eyes watching TV. They don't have pot bellies. It's the joke version that you see in the comedies that men are taught really to emulate, and that's how women see them. Therefore the women would come first to the one with power, the one who promised security and a plan, an agenda, whereas her own helpless little husband didn't have any at all, so she would come to the Nazis giving allegiance, and Hitler said, the children must follow her and then must follow the man. He has no option. And he was quoting Nero because these sciences have always been understood by those who were coached for leadership positions by the hidden priesthoods. The technique of control over vast populations has always been that of divide and conquer. We see it in the class structure, which was deliberately created and used to put everyone into a group. You were born into it and you adopt the cultural values of that class. It gave you a sense of belonging, a tribal need, you see, which is now used against the people. The communists that really were working for the New World Order, as both sides always are, and you have to have two sides to guide the herd into the compromise which is the solution in itself. The communists knew they'd have to separate the children from the parents, at least mentally, and it's interesting that most of the studying on this very problem was done by aristocracy in England. That should be a clue to who ran communism. They also had to separate apart from the generations. That way there's less communication. History is not passed on. They also had to separate the genders, and George Orwell put this very well in 1984, the book and the movie. The movie version done in England in 1984 to commemorate the book with Richard Burton and John Hurt, that's a good movie to get a hold of. There's so much crammed in there. People who were born into this system and who have been forced to adapt, dynamic adaptation will look for the powerful, and in a system which encourages power, personal social climbing, which we call success, you'll find that this is also used amongst the genders, an ancient technique once again. The descendants of those who gave us marriage and marriage for life to work for as we build up their economic system for them, the same people, the ancestors, are now dissolving marriage. That's why it doesn't work for most people anymore. It served its purpose and now everyone must be put into their subdivision, their substrata of class and gender and so on, so now you have many categories. A pigeonhole for every type, you see, totally divided, totally conquered, and yet human nature itself, even when the people who are taught the slogans and brainwashed with the slogans of political correctness, which is also how you respond to things more in the manner of a conditioned reflex, and that's what a slogan really is. When you say something which is supposed to be offensive, people will immediately shout back some slogan that's become popular put from the top down through media and schooling, and that stops them from thinking. It stops any inquiry into any depth of understanding about the actual topic itself, because human nature doesn't change. It does not change. It's an interesting thing to see how men are portrayed and have been since the 60s, mainly on television. It was like a switch had been reversed and it came from the old hero stuff as the old system was nearing the end of its usefulness, and suddenly men were just jerks and fools and drunks and stupid. Always portrayed in the comedies where the children were much more intelligent than the dad. The wife made all the decisions. She treated the dad like another one of the children, and that's to be the role model for the male. It's also symptomatic of the fact that the power, and it's all to do with power on all levels, and power can be married to respect, but it's all to do with the power structure being shifted to the female, not for the female's use. We, because of our egos, tend to grab hold of things which claim to give us power, but in reality it's for someone else's purpose, which works very, very well. The women today, as I say, the black women, the young female, has grown up generally with a mother who runs her life, has had different men through the house, and when she's a teenager she looks for someone with power. She goes for the gang leader, and it's the gang leader, the one who seems to have the answers, who's not afraid of people or the system or anyone else that will respond to. The black male himself has had his culture shaped for him, including the music and the fashions and all the rest of it. That was given to him by the top, pushed through much music and Hollywood, and he adapts it at the bottom. He becomes a target of criticism by society. This is intentional. This is absolutely intentional. However, the same technique hasn't been used on the black culture, because every country that was under the Soviet rule has gone the same way, where the women were promoted to the top. Divided and conquered. Pretty well the whole country, the Soviet system was run by authorized NGOs. The leaders were generally always women and the men had their lower jobs, and now that the Soviets have pulled out, you have men who have no confidence whatsoever. Millions of them drink themselves into the grave. The women are all leaving those countries. They're trained. They're educated and they're looking for work elsewhere or marriage to men in other countries, but they're neglecting the men in their own country. This was all designed deliberately so. That's the reality of the life we have been born into, the system of mass manipulation, scientific socialism they call it, where people go through their lives, and their thoughts generally are not really their own. Their opinions are not their own. They have conditioned responses to topics and situations which were induced into them, either from their parents, then reinforced through school, then backed by media, fiction, and even novels. This is an all-pervasive, scientific, connected system to make you the way you are, which certainly is not to make you happy. Those who get offended by the truth, remember, I'm talking in generalities. There's always the odd exception here and there of all ages, different genders, and it's generally the exception who understands this who gets a hard time in society, because they know. They are aware and they're living amongst those who are unaware. I'll pick up some more on this same topic tomorrow night. Tune in then to the site cuttingthroughthematrix.com. And may your God, your gods, your tree, your favorite flower, your favorite pet, or your budgerigar, go with you.